Talktainlent Radio Worldwide Sound. Talktainlentradio.com. We give you a reason to come. The world's greatest radio. We give you a reason to stay. Radio, the way it should be heard. You got the power.
The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guests and not necessarily those of Talktainlentradio.com, 3MR Production, its ownership, management, or staff.
We got the power. The power. The power. The power.
This is The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on Talktainlentradio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio, the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
This is The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., heard exclusively on Talktainlentradio.com. Radio, the way it should be heard. And we thank you for joining us in the year 2014. And as you know, we're live on Wednesdays at 10 a.m. And we thank all of you who have called in or who have written in and who have sent us letters of support and all those kinds of things. We thank you so much for being a part of the compensatory family. Joining us, of course, at this time is Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. And you can get Mr. Fuller's two works, and there might be a third in the pipeline. That sounds exciting. At least you can get his two works at www.producejustice.com. That's www.producejustice.com. Now, that's one word, producejustice.com. Mr. Fuller, how are you? And tell us about how to go about getting information from your work.
I'm still learning, and you can get the basic textbook and the additional word guide by going to producejustice.com. That's producejustice.com. And what will come up on the screen is a book that has a computer design on the cover.
Uh-huh.
And that's the basic book. And the subtitle of the book is a textbook workbook for thought, speech, and/or action for victims of racism. And racism is described as white supremacy. Then there's another book that's a counter-racist word guide. In that book is just words. It's not a dictionary, but it's a word guide that shows you the different words that are used in the system of racism, and all in the English language, and some words that should not be used at all. Some words that when people use the words, they don't have clear definitions. So in this book, it gives compensatory definitions, and/or it will direct the reader to ask questions about these words, about how they are being used, because there's a lot of confusion in the language that has to do with the racist system that is very, very, very disturbing and misleads people away from any conclusions that will come up with solutions. We should be directing everything towards solutions to problems. At this late date, this is 2014 now, everything should be about problem solving. Those two words, not just rhetoric just for the sake of rhetoric, talking just for the sake of being heard. It should be about what is the solution to every problem that is on this planet, and how do you get there in record time?
Uh-huh. Mr. Fuller, this is 2014, some would say. And as we walk around the planet, let's just put on our shoes, you and me, and let's just walk around the planet. Let's just imagine that we've got the power to do that. And we walk all over the planet, every continent, everywhere we go. Let's like you say, like you always said, let's look at the big picture. what would we see in terms of black and white everywhere we would go? If I throw out a so-called area of the world, what would we see in that area of the world, for example? Let's say I throw out India. Would I see in India white supremacy? Would I see it over there, Mr. Fuller?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
You'd see it in any place that you went, because that's the only government on the planet. There is no other government. Now, I'm making that statement. That doesn't say because Neely Fuller made that statement that that's true. So I always ask people or request of people, whatever I say, particularly when I make a statement like that racism, the system of white supremacy, is the only government on the planet. All other governments are just words. They're not actual governments. People call them that. People call them countries. People call them systems. They call them by all kinds of names. But the only real government on this planet, as of 2014, here in January, is the system of white supremacy, which is a government that's based on those white people, not all white people, but those white people who have chosen to dominate and mistreat people based on color. They are the government of the entire planet. So anywhere you go on the planet, you will find that government in operation in all 9 areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. It's the most powerful government that the world has ever seen, and the most efficient.
So what you're telling me is that wherever, even if it appears that black people are in charge, holding down the office, maybe somewhere in Zimbabwe, in South Africa, in Madagascar, in other spots of the world, or even over in China, you're telling me that even though they sign off all the legislation, make all the decisions, and they say they're the government, that is not correct. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that's entirely incorrect. The white supremacists are the bottom line people. They have all the other people up front. That's a part of it. That's a part of the refinement stage of white supremacy. Then there will be more of this. There will be lots of dressed up non-white people parading in the streets or standing on balconies waving at throngs of people. There'll be lots and lots and lots of that. There'll be more and more, actually into the hundreds of thousands of black people in limousines, waving at crowds from the back windows of limousines, all dressed in fine cloth and all like that. There will be many thousands of those. In fact, it will run into the millions eventually because there are more and more people coming into the planet. But then there will be hundreds of millions that won't have a biscuit if this system continues, because that's what the system generates. It's all a matter of percentages. Like any business, the business of racism is a fraudulent business. It's a business that's very powerful, but it's a gangster business, and it's based on gangster business principles, meaning you have a relatively few people. That's when you say relatively few, you're talking about the number of people on the entire planet. And so it won't look like a few when you're going around photographing everybody, but photographing a few, that is. And when you say a few, you might run into the millions. So you will have the grand illusion that a lot of people are prospering in the system of white supremacy. But when you look at all of the people on the planet, you will see that it's not a lot. It's hardly even honorable mention. The number of people who, even though running into the millions, are doing very well, people of color, living in mansions, you might say, riding around waving at crowds and receiving awards and going down red carpets and whatnot and dressed in their finest. I call it the black faces up front syndrome. And you'll see more and more and more of this. Lots of hoopla, balloons, fireworks, you name it. They'll have it. Gold carpets, they have it. Luxury liners, they have it. But when you look at the hundreds of millions, they won't have not anything at all. They'll be suffering and worse than living, you might say, if you can call it living, in conditions that are worse than animals throughout this entire planet. And the white supremacists are accelerating this program. And you do it through one of the main instruments, what they've always done. If they want to capture a lot of people, they do it through the minds, through the educational systems, through the, nowadays, the television, and all kinds of ways of communication now. They're putting that pedal to the metal.
So in spite of the communications infrastructure, the message stays the same.
The message stays the same. And they will have more and more what you might call black icons, just like they have done with the late Nelson Mandela. And no criticism of him at all should not be, or Martin Luther King, or anyone else of color who has made a large contribution, who has tried to solve the problem and whatnot. But the white supremacists, they will look at all of the people who have tried to do something. Adam Clayton Powell, Albert Luthuli, Tom Mboya of Kenya, Jomo Kenyatta, Patrice Lumumba.
Now, Albert Luthuli was a Nobel Prize winner, wasn't he?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and a lot of people don't even know who Albert Luthuli is now.
Yeah.
But see, but the white supremacists, if they want to, they'll resurrect his popularity and whatnot and put it on large pictures and say about his history and his fights to do the correct thing and straighten out, produce justice, as you might say, and eliminate the system of racism and what they call then colonialism, which is just another word for racism. That is significant anyway. But they'll do all of that. They'll do it constantly. They'll do more and more of it. But business as usual will be promise them everything, but give them what they've always had. That's talking about the majority.
That is heavy. Mr. Fuller, why? Why this type of system? Why not just go back to the hardcore way of being? Why not just go back to the hardcore end days when you use the Negro word? Why not go back to that day? Why operate like this? Seems like to me this is awful expensive. It creates a lot of confusion, even amongst white people. Why this system, Mr. Fuller?
Well, it's like what was depicted in Godfather 2 with Hyman Roth and Michael Corleone sitting in Florida, having a little chat about the future. And Mr. Hyman Roth says, nobody wants bloodshed anymore. It doesn't pay. If you can avoid it, if you can avoid a war, you might have to whack a few people every now and then, or drone them to death, or something like that. But generally speaking, we want a smooth operation. Let's all get on the veranda and stop all this squabbling among ourselves, which the system of white supremacy is a criminal enterprise. And so let's sit on the veranda here in Cuba or someplace, and let's bring out the cake, and everybody get a slice, and that will be symbolic of everybody's going to share, in all of our operations in the future, and everything's going to be smooth, and so sit back and eat your cake and enjoy it. Everybody's going to get a slice and give me a small piece. See, that's the white supremacists' new philosophy, the refinement stage of racism.
Now, how long?
And that's what they're telling the white people of the world.
Right.
See what I mean? Because they're having squabbles among themselves, just like they had a so-called civil war over who's going to be in charge of the slaves. And how best to handle slaves. What do you do with them after you've had them and you're ready to kind of throw them away or disperse them or whatever? How best for the future? Because you got to think about the future if you're going to keep this enterprise going. Now, the average white person born into the system asks the same question that the average non-white person ask. You're born into a system that's already been in place. So a white person would ask, what kind of system do we have in place? What is this all about, Father? What's this all about, Dad, Mom? And say, well, unfortunately, some of them very sympathetic toward black people, the non-white people of the planet, say, unfortunately, our ancestors set this up, and we're a part of it. It's been passed on for generation to generation, and we just don't have a better system. We're working on it. We're trying to come up with a better system, hopefully a system called justice, but it's kind of difficult to get there when you have all these conveniences in a system that works very well. The system of white supremacy works better than any form of government that the world has ever seen. It really does. It's very productive when it comes to material movement. In other words, arranging materials. But it's not productive when it comes to arranging people. It destroys hundreds of millions of people in order to get trinkets, in order to get lipstick and fingernail polish, and just, and also heavy equipment, farm tools, automobiles, airplanes, rocket ships that can go all over the space areas. It's a very efficient system when it comes to that. But it leaves hundreds of millions of people on the factory floor. In fact, it's gearing up to even take care of dogs better than it does people, because there are huge numbers of white supremacists who believe that a dog is really better to have around than a non-white person of any kind. And
that's deep.
A lot of non-white people have come to believe that.
That's true. Mr. Fuller, under what conditions, because I know you've analyzed this very closely, under what conditions would refinement stop? When would they say, all right, enough of this, we got to go another direction? Under what conditions would this happen?
Well, when you think of a better system, and the better system has been thought of, but it hasn't been taken seriously. Everywhere you'll see, all over the place, you'll hear the word, and I write about it. Everybody writes about it. I didn't invent the word justice, but it has no legal definition, and I didn't find that out until 1994. There is no legal definition for the word justice, so I gave it a compensatory word that I think will hold up and stand the test of time. I think it will, and if it doesn't, when someone comes up with a better one, I will grab that one, because we need a definition. If you don't have a definition for a word, you're really just grasping for air. You don't really know what you're doing at a certain point. You don't know how to measure what you're doing. So the definition that I came up with after I heard about it not having a legal definition in 1994, up until then I'd been calling it, in a compensatory way, balance between people. But that's not definitive enough. That's almost like another slogan. So I said, hey, you got to tell people something that they can grab hold to, something they can measure. So it took me about a year to come up with a compensatory definition for the word justice. And that is two parts: guaranteeing that no person is mistreated. That's part one. Part two is guaranteeing that the person who needs help the most gets the most constructive help. And when you put those two together, you can always measure what you're doing each and every day, in every setting. Even if it's just 10 people in a room, you can always measure who is being mistreated. If 10 people in a room and people are moving around, interacting with each other, you stop what you're doing every now and then and look around and take a survey and say, now, wait a minute. We're all moving around among each other in this one room, 10 people. Now, is anybody in this room being mistreated while we're doing all this moving around? Is anybody's toes being stepped on? Is anybody being given more coffee breaks than somebody else? Because that's mistreatment, okay? Then you ask the other question. Is there anybody in this room who needs help the most. Everybody in this room needs help because all the people on the planet need help, whether they're white or non-white, male or female, whatever. Everybody needs help. Every animal, every bird needs help. All day long you need some kind of help. But then there are people who are not being helped because everybody else is being helped and they're being overlooked. So you say, after a little while, you take a survey and look around that room of 10 people and say, wait a minute. Now, we have checked to see if anybody's being mistreated, so nobody's being mistreated overtly, but maybe somebody's being mistreated on the back end of it because there's somebody who's being left behind here. I mean, everybody got paid last week except Mary. Mary didn't get paid last week. And nobody noticed that but Mary.
Nobody but Mary.
Yeah, nobody but Mary. So, yes, we got to go back and check with Mary and see if why is it she didn't get paid last week.
Mr. Fuller, stay right there. There's more to come. We're going to get to why, under what conditions will refinement change and we'll see a resort to the old ways.
We go where you go. Download the new Talktainlent Radio app to your Android, iPhone, or tablet. Now you can take us wherever you go, and it's free. Download today. The world's greatest radio, the way it should be heard.
Richard Holt, research chemist, University of Rio Grande in southeastern Ohio, which again, you can see your condition. Richard's Remedy is a multi-purpose cream that works on a variety of skin conditions. I sell it in a 1-ounce container through the internet for $12.95 at richardsremedy.com.
All major credit cards accepted. Call 937-607-4259 or go to email info@talktainmentradio.com for a free sample of Richard's Remedy.
Hi, this is Bob Fitrakis, editor of the weekly Columbus Free Press. That's right, we're now weekly. If you don't like monopoly news, support your alternative newspaper, the Columbus Free Press. Read it and advertise. Keep the dream alive. The Free Press, bringing you the other side of the news since 1970. Now more than ever. Call us 824-3853. Pick it up at your favorite newsstand. The Columbus Free Press. Keep the dream alive.
Hi, my name is Shifa Karfania, and I'm with Panache Fitness, and I'm here with your Fit in a Minute tip for today. The app hazard. A 2012 report found that more than 20% of the 1,500 apps examined claim to treat or cure a medical condition. That's what's worrying the FDA, is that they don't always live up to those claims. Few of the health apps available today are research-based, yet consumers are turning to this co-pay-free advice in droves. Last year, an estimated 247 million people downloaded at least one mobile health app, and another recent study found that smartphone owners have turned to their devices with medical questions. Another study showed that 1 in 10 Americans often use symptom checker apps instead of seeing a doctor because that represents time off from work or they simply don't have medical insurance. Even savvy consumers can be sucked in, and the scary reality is, trusting your health to an app could leave you in worse shape than before you downloaded it. Beware of apps that promise fast or quick results. If it sounds too good, as the old saying goes, it usually is. Apps from well-known health organizations are most likely to have solid medical backing. You can also choose from government apps at app.usa.gov. I'm Sheba Karfania with Panache Fitness, and this was your Fit in a Minute tip. Stay fit.
The United Independent Compensatory Code System concept by Neely Fuller is considered as one of the substantial and basic books for understanding and effectively countering racism. Neely Fuller will turn upside down everything you've heard and everything you think you know about racism and how it works. Call area code 202-484-5461. 202-484-5461.
This is the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., heard exclusively on Talktainmentradio.com. Radio, the way it should be heard, the world's greatest radio. Joining me, of course, every Wednesday at this time at 10 p.m. 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Wednesdays, live, is Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr., the author of two of what we call the most definitive works probably ever written on the issue of white supremacy, racism, and its impact upon its victims. Mr. Fuller also does other things with me. I've had him on some of my other shows and for many, many years, and of course we've had him in the city many times. So, I've been working with Mr. Fuller for quite a while, so I'm just glad to have him back with us in the year 2014. Let's go to the line. We have a caller, Mr. Fuller. Caller, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Yes, I have a question for Mr. Fuller.
Mm-hmm.
I've already read his book, and
now he's got two books. Which one?
The United Independent Compensatory.
Compensatory.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So, when I speak with black people, and when words don't work, and I'm trying to explain white supremacy, because a lot of black people kind of know about racism and somewhat of white supremacy, but they still really don't want to accept it. And, I talked to them, for the last couple months, and they will acknowledge it, but they always go back to, well, I'm a Christian, we should love each other, or I'm a Muslim. And, words are very important, but it seems like you just can't get through people because, a lot of black people just really don't want to accept the reality of racism. They think we're really free. And, I just give you an example, like when Martin Luther King was assassinated. I mean, he preached nonviolence, and they still shot him, and he never carried a gun or shot anybody. So, just because black people can own guns or whatever, don't make them free because, if you commit a crime or whatever, the law is going to take you to jail. So what I'm saying is, when words don't work with black people and they don't want to accept this white supremacy, do I just avoid them and just do what I got to do?
Very good question. Mr. Fuller?
No, you don't avoid people in anything that you're doing that's constructive. You interact with people. The question is, how do you interact with people? You interact with people, first of all, from where they are. And you make sure that when you interact with anybody, it's for the most constructive purpose. Now, it's two words to keep in mind, problem solving, because in my opinion, I could be incorrect, but the logic shows that everybody on this planet was put here with the mission of problem solving. Now, a lot of people have decided they're going to use that time to make problems, and that's very unfortunate. But how did I come to the conclusion we're put here to solve problems? That's because we have problems. So the way you approach black people when you're talking to them about racism, which I say is the biggest problem that the world has ever seen, even in 2014, it's the biggest problem on this planet right now is racism. If anybody has a problem, it's because of the system of racism, because that's the only government on the planet. Now, so if a person doesn't want to talk about the biggest problem on the planet that's causing all of their problems, because everybody has problems, all of these people who are saying they don't want to talk about racism, but they'll turn right around and say that they got a problem. And if they're black and they're walking on this planet and they're saying, oh, yeah, I got a whole lot of problems, but I don't have time to talk about racism, well, you're not really solving your problem, because that is the cause of every problem you have ever had. If you're black and you're breathing on this planet right now, that is the cause of every problem you have ever had since you have been on this planet. Now, that statement is either true or false. Now, but maybe that's not the way to talk about it. If a person doesn't want to talk about it, you can't force people to listen to you, and you shouldn't just walk away and leave the problem there because it just continues. You're trying to solve the problem because that's the mission. That's everybody's mission. That's my mission. Trying to solve the biggest problems and then after that start working on the smaller problems. So, how do you approach it? You say, okay, Willie, You don't want to talk about racism. You say you're tired of hearing it and all like that, and tired of having people whine to you about it, and it's a boring topic, and you just rather talk about baseball or football or something else because you're tired of hearing all this racism this and racism that, and you're sick of it. And the person is telling the truth, and they maybe should be, but they still have the problem. So what's the best way to talk about it? You talk about it by talking about whatever that person's problem is. That's the answer. That's the compensatory procedure. I do not mention racism to someone who doesn't want to talk about racism. I don't try to force conversation. I'll say, okay, you don't want to talk about racism. What do you want to talk about? We're standing here now, and you want to talk about something. What do you want to talk about? That's the question. And whatever the person says should be okay with you, because they're going to be talking about something that has to do, sooner or later, with a problem that they're having. And that's going to lead to a discussion about racism, and you wait for them to bring it up. They'll be talking about, well, I got fired off that job, and I got fired off of this job, and I got fired off that other job. Okay, it's question time. Well, why did you get fired? Well, they act like they don't want no black people working over there in that warehouse. I mean, because every time it looks like wait a minute. You told me you didn't want to talk about racism. Didn't you just tell me you did not want to talk about racism? Well, yeah, I told you that, but I mean, that's all that stuff that you're talking. But I'm talking about my job. Wait a minute. You just said that they didn't want to hire black people over there, or they didn't want black people working over there, and that's how you lost your last job. Didn't you just tell me that, Willie? Now we're getting somewhere. See, wait for them to bring it up, because they're going to bring it up. If you're black and on this planet, you're going to bring up the subject of racism if you're at least bit sober, unless you're high on something. You're going to bring it up sooner or later because it dominates every move that you make. And you can't run away from it. You're going to have to deal with it. So if you don't want to talk about it in terms of white and non-white, the scientific way of talking about it so that it makes you feel better, talk about justice. Justice means guaranteeing that nobody's mistreated. Because if you start talking about guaranteeing that nobody's mistreated, you're going to be talking about racism anyway without even mentioning it. I used to do that when I was on the job. I would be a person who would be the last person to talk about racism, even though I'm chomping at the bit to talk about racism. I would just talk about justice, because that's the easy way of talking about racism. A white supremacist who is sitting around that table and you start talking about justice, they know that you're talking about racism, but they are not going to interject it at some point unless they get angry and lose their temper, because then they may raise the question around that table. They're saying, are you saying that we're prejudiced here? Are you saying that I'm a racist? And you say, sir, no, I didn't say that. I'm talking about justice. I'm talking about people being mistreated. And there are certain people here in this warehouse who are being mistreated, and I'm one of them. And I will cite the details of the mistreatment. Number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. And unless we believe in mistreatment here at this illustrious institution, sir, and always be polite. Always be polite. Don't shout. Don't curse. Don't name call. And certainly don't accuse anybody of being racist. Just talk about mistreatment. Who's being mistreated? And who is not getting what they should be getting, meaning the help, the constructive help that they should be getting. That's how you do it on a job. Don't even mention racism. Wait for somebody else to bring it up, because sooner or later, all roads are going to lead to racism anyway.
Yeah, because I have black people that are religious, that are Christians, and they will say it, but they say, well, I'm just going to leave it in Jesus Christ's hands, or the Lord will take care of it. They'll say something like that.
Okay, let's stop right there. When they say that, then they'll say, okay, what do you mean by you believe in Jesus Christ taking care of it? See, all you need to do is just ask questions. The questions and answers will take you right where you need to go anyway. You don't ever get frustrated in any conversation with anybody, because all you have to do is ask enough questions, and when enough answers come, and don't help people with the answers. That's another thing. Never help a person with the answer. If a person makes a statement, well, Jesus will take care of it, then say, okay, Jesus will take care of it, okay, by doing what? And is there anything that Jesus wants you to do? That's two questions. And then sit back and wait. And I'll guarantee you that the kind of answers that you get will lead that person to right where you need them to go. I'll guarantee you, all you got to do is just keep asking enough questions. And you will know what questions to ask by the last thing that the person said. Just like the illustration you just gave. This is the way it will work. The person will say, I don't want to talk about all that race stuff. I'm a Christian, and Jesus will take care of me. Okay? Well, Jesus will take care of you in order for you to do what? Now, that's a question. Why is Jesus taking care of you? And what does Jesus want you to do while you're being taken care of? Is there anything Jesus wants you to do? And don't leap into the answer with them. Don't help them with the answer. Let them give you the exact answer of about what Jesus wants them to do. And just wait. Oh. And then when they answer that question, then ask another question. And then ask another question. Because all solutions to every problem in the universe is a process of nothing but questions and answers. That's a law of the entire universe that was put here by the creator of the universe. Questions and answers. It'll take you right where you need to go.
Okay.
Okay. Did that answer your questions?
Yeah. Because it, like black people are so religious, and I just said, well, before, it's all good to be about being religious, but this color thing has got me so confused and upset that I just want to close off and move somewhere to the mountains where ain't nobody.
Now let me ask you something. You said confused. What do you mean by the C word?
Well, when I say confused, it's like I know it's here, and I don't understand why I could see it after I read Mr. Neely Fuller's book. I could see it. I could understand it. I never graduated from high school. I know kind of more how it works. And I got parents that are educated, that got degrees, and they don't ever really want to talk about it. And they are Christians, and that's kind of confused. Now, somebody can be educated to go to college, have degrees, but they want to avoid this racism. They don't want to never talk about it. Well, my parents are school teachers. They don't ever want to talk about it.
Well, hold on for Mr. Fuller. He's bringing up something very significant. You want to respond to that?
Yes, I just said it. I just said it over and over again. Always talk about the subject that the person wants to talk about. I don't care if it's nothing but baseball or football and whatnot. Let them talk. Even if you're not interested in the subject, let the person talk. But when they get to the problem part of the conversation, and many people do like to talk about a problem that they have, now we're stepping into the arena. The minute that person started talking about a problem, even if it's just they can't get a babysitter today, all right, they're talking about a problem. Well, why is it you can't get a babysitter? So you go into the question mode then, Well, I need a babysitter because I need to get to church, and I can't get to church because I'm a Christian and I believe in Jesus, but I can't get to church because I need a babysitter. Well, why is it that you need a babysitter in order to go to church? Well, I don't want to take the baby because when I take the baby, the baby makes a problem. Here's that word problem again. By, I have to keep getting up and leaving and going, to change the baby or whatever, or the baby makes noise. My baby's real noisy and whatnot, and that annoys some of the other worshipers and whatnot. You say, oh, the baby is a problem in church. Okay, so you got to have a babysitter so that you can go to church, so that you can learn clearly and don't disturb other people while they're worshiping, while someone takes care of your baby. someone who presumably is not in church. Okay? All right?
Mr.
Okay,
Fuller,
let's
Mr.
keep
Fuller,
going.
Mr. Fuller, hold it right there.
All
Hold it
right.
right there. I'll give you a chance to finish up. Stay right there. More to come on the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., heard exclusively on Talktainlentradio.com.
Hi, this is Bob Fitrakis, editor of the weekly Columbus Free Press. That's right, we're now weekly. If you don't like monopoly news, support your alternative newspaper, the Columbus Free Press. Read it and advertise. Keep the dream alive. The Free Press, bringing you the other side of the news since 1970. Now more than ever. Call us 824-3853. Pick it up at your favorite newsstand. The Columbus Free Press. Keep the dream alive.
We're cracking down on Medicare fraud.
The health care law gives us powerful tools to fight it,
To investigate it,
prosecute it,
and stop criminals.
Our senior Medicare Patrol volunteers
are teaching seniors across the country
to stop, spot, and report fraud.
You can help.
Guard your Medicare card.
Don't give out your card number over the phone.
Call to report any suspected fraud.
We're cracking down on Medicare fraud.
Let's make Medicare stronger for all of us.
Did you know that birthday parties help build confidence in kids?
Yeah. Did you know that giving kids less sugar before bedtime helps them sleep better?
Oh, totally. Did you know that friendly kids have more friends?
Everybody knows that.
Hey, guys, did you know that most people think they're using the right car seat for their kid, but they're not?
I didn't know that.
Parents who really know it all know for sure that their child is in the right car seat at the right age and size. Visit safercar.gov/the-right-seat to make sure your child is protected. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
The United Independent Compensatory Code System concept by Neely Fuller is considered as one of the substantial and basic books for understanding and effectively countering racism. Neely Fuller will turn upside down everything you've heard and everything you think you know about racism and how it works. Call area code 202-484-5461. 202-484-5461.
This is the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on Talktainlentradio.com. I'm Brother Kahari, sitting in with Mr. Fuller. If you want to get Mr. Fuller's newest shows, you can go to Talktainlentradio.com, and you can plug right in to programs and then go to Mr. Fuller, and then you can get the podcast. Mr. Fuller has several podcasts there, which you can download and listen to. Also, tonight, you can hear a replay. I believe the replays are at 3 p.m. today and 10 p.m. tonight, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So you can hear this show, if you don't catch it live, you can hear it today at 3 and at 10 exclusively on TalktainmentRadio.com. Mr. Fuller, I believe we're joined by another caller. Caller, are you there? Third caller.
Yes, hello?
Okay, hold on. I'm talking to the caller who has not had a chance to speak yet.
Okay.
Okay, is that you?
No, I've already spoken, but
okay.
I was just holding on.
Okay, Mr. Fuller, go ahead.
Yes, and I'm going to get back to fleshing out that illustration I was given. It's kind of a long illustration. I'm making it up as I go along, but I'm just giving you how this will work, so you can just do it naturally. You can just say, okay, you can't get a babysitter. That's what the lady said. She wants to go to church, but she can't go to church because she doesn't have a babysitter. Well, why is it you don't have a babysitter? I don't make enough money. Why is it you don't make enough money? Because of that job that I have. It doesn't pay enough. Why is it doesn't pay enough? That job that you have. Well, they say that I didn't get enough education and whatnot. Why is it you didn't get enough education? Well, that school that I tried to go to, they wouldn't. I couldn't go to the school that I needed to go to get the education, and the school that I went to, I mean, it was substandard, and I was always looking, where I could go to a better school, but I wasn't in a neighborhood where I could learn anything that I could use, and I wound up on a job that didn't pay much money, and by me not getting paid much money, I couldn't get enough money to pay a babysitter, and now I can't go to church. Okay. Now, what's wrong with that school that you were in? Well, the children are always fighting and shooting and whatnot, and they got chains on every door. You can hardly even get into school to get educated on account of all the dope dealers and whatnot that are around. Well, why do you have dope dealers around there? Well, they say that it's a bad neighborhood. Well, why is it a bad neighborhood? Well, it's because all of the white folks that used to be there, they moved away into a better neighborhood, and I've been trying to get in that neighborhood, but I can't get in that neighborhood. Oh, white folks. Oh, is that what you're talking about? Well, now, what did Jesus tell you to do about that? Maybe he talked to Martin Luther King, because Martin Luther King was a Christian, and he said that maybe just being in the church, talking about what Jesus used to do, maybe Jesus got some things for you to do, like straighten out your baby situation. Okay? Maybe. Have you ever thought of that? That's a question. Have you ever thought Martin Luther King, who you say you like to learn about, you went to Washington, D.C. and looked at his stature, but now when it comes to doing something, what did he do? He was a Christian. In fact, the person who you said was the real Christian, Jesus himself. I understand that he walked off the job. Did he or didn't he? His father was in the carpenter business, not in the preaching business. But I understand that Jesus didn't like some of the things that was going on, and he went down into the villages. He even had some fishermen walk off the job. I don't think the fisherman supervisor liked that, and said, "Follow me, lay down your nets." I know a little bit about what you're talking about, but you're talking about a person who did things. And maybe that person that you're talking about, who you want to follow, maybe you ought to think about where he went if you're going to follow it, and what he did that's worth following. Maybe. Or am I misinformed?
Gotcha.
These are questions.
Gotcha.
So you ask the person. Just ask the person just the questions. Always go with what they're talking about and see where it leads.
Okay. Mr. Fuller, we've got a third caller who just called, a second caller who just called and is on the line. Caller, are you there? You have a question for Mr. Fuller?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
Yes, I'm hearing Caucasians on various talk radio shows speak about the degeneration of society today and admit that many wrongs were done to blacks in the past, and that was just a beta test to do this to all people today. And now there are just different classes of people, elitists and globalists, who are above the law and above everyone else. They're very individualistic and selfish and evil. These Caucasians now want blacks to join their ranks to address problems that affect all people now that Caucasians feel affected by elitists and globalists. While the mindset of racism still exists, as well as the racist system and infrastructure still exists, my question is, should blacks who feel that they are victims of racism join the ranks of these whites who say, or these Caucasians who say, that all people are affected, and we need to address these elitists and globalists who feel like they're better than everybody?
That's a very good question, Mr. Fuller, and that's pretty much what we're hearing with the terms like Illuminati and all of that kind of stuff. Mr. Fuller, go ahead.
Should black people join? See, I want to be very specific on what that question was. Should black people join with white people to do what?
To address the wrongs that are being done to all people by these elitists and globalists.
Oh, the white people of the planet don't need to join with black people to do anything.
True.
Because if you're white, all you have to do is just talk to your neighbors. You don't have to talk to a black person about anything at all. And I've told white people that. White people that I've talked to. I said, you don't need to talk to me about anything. What do I know? I'm not doing anything. I'm not in control of anything. You don't need to talk to me about anything. You need to talk to your neighbors, your white neighbors, the people that you go hunting and fishing with. That will change the world instantly. Just that alone. Get them on the page with you. And when I wake up in the morning, all problems are solved because you will have solved them yesterday talking to your fishing buddies. That's the way that's done. And everybody who's listening to my voice now all over the world can say that because that's how it would get done. Let's look at the logic of it. If a white person is talking to me, and many white people do come among black people and say, I sympathize with you people, I can see your misery, I'm photographing your misery, I'll even, ride the bus with you and share your misery, okay? And, yes, it is miserable, and it is awful, and the situation is terrible. And we need to all join hands, like Martin Luther King said, and sing the old Negro spiritual. And I'll come into your church and help you do that. But no, that's one way of doing it, but that's the long way around. Because after you get through talking to me for 40 days and 40 nights, or 40 years, or 400 years, or whatever the number is, you still got to go and talk to your next door neighbor who is right over there with you, the people right there in your house you can start with if you're white. That's the way out of that. See, the white supremacists, they always do a little safari and come among black people and hand out a few cases of medicine, and everybody at the end of the day in the African sunset, they hold hands. And the white lady runs out, in her jungle gym uniform, and holds hands with black people and say, oh, I sympathize with you. Oh, let's all pray together that this world will change. And then get on that plane and fly right back to that mansion somewhere in the hills of Arizona and have cups of tea and talk about the great things that they did during the summer, helping the people who are downtrodden in Uganda. Enough already. Don't go anywhere. Talk to the people who are right there pushing the buttons on Wall Street deals. And they're all white. Talk to them. Talk to the people in the big buildings in London and Paris. One white person talking to another. Hey, let's figure out a way to stop this system that we have of racism. Let's get out of the business of racism and get into the business of justice. How about that? Let's get serious about it and stop giving it lip service and stop these charity movements all over the world where we go and sing songs and pray and kneel down with black people in the mud for a few months and then brush ourselves off and disappear. Let's stop this. Let's stop this charade. Let's stop this hypocrisy, because that's what we're doing. We're just making ourselves feel good, and we're not helping at all. We need to put these people right where they need to be, and that is on an even playing field with us, and then stop playing, really, and start working toward producing the type of world that we're supposed to have and become universal men and universal women.
Mr. Fuller, let me give him a chance to react to what you said. Caller, go ahead.
So all victims of racism can do is tell them to go and talk to their own Caucasian neighbors. I get from that all victims of racism can do is compensate and deal with racism. The actual problem will be solved by the Caucasians who look like racists. Is that true? Is that the only way it'll be solved? Yes, anytime you talk to a white person, you should be talking about problem solving. In fact, anytime you talk to a black person, and that's going to be painful for black people because black people like to talk nonsense, okay? But if we just did that much, we will be showing what you might call, quote, unquote, good faith in being serious about something that is serious, all the things we're whining about. Suppose every black person, when they had a conversation, said, let's talk about something that has to do with problem solving, how to solve problems. Otherwise, let's not talk about anything at all. How about that?
as the new black culture worldwide. Every conversation is going to be about solving a problem. Questions and answers about how to go about solving a problem. Every conversation, without exception. Otherwise, we'll sit there in silence.
Mm-hmm. Caller, I get the impression you're trying to figure out what should you do in those situations. Am I correct? Or what should black folks do? You know, should we join on? Should we step back with suspicion? Should we, what language do we use to deal with this? I think that's where you're going. Am I correct?
You're correct.
Okay. All right, Mr. Fuller. He's trying to figure out, because obviously he's talked to people, he's approached people, have approached him, and I see it going on also. You got certain people on the internet who are saying that they are fighting against the global elite. These are the new words they're using. The global elites, the tyranny of the of the banksters. I mean, you hear all of that language coming out from these folk. I know exactly. I don't need to call any names, but I know who you're talking about. I know some of the ones. And what you're saying is this another ploy to mislead non-white people while at the same time maintaining white supremacy? Mr. Fuller.
It could be. And then on the other hand, it may not be. There are a lot of white people who are absolutely sincere, but I'm talking about process. See, I'm not just talking about rhetoric. I'm not talking about showcasing. I'm talking about the actual process. I have been in the company of many white people who claim that they are definitely against racism. I stood right next to them. I've sat next to them on podiums and whatnot, and I've never said a word to them. Why? Because what can I teach them? I can't teach them anything about racism. White people know about racism. They don't need to be educated by me. They need to talk to the people who are practicing racism, whom they went to school with, joined fraternities with, or in the sororities with, work with every day. These are the people that help them get jobs and make the N-word jokes all day long. Talk to them. I'm talking to the white people of the world now. Talk to them and show them the error of their ways. Not only that, while you're doing it, show them the error of your ways, because you're part of the system too. We all are. And then talk about what to do about it. And this thing will be over in record time. But like I said, let's look at it in a practical sense. When that white person, and I'm talking to the caller now, comes to talk to you, what does that white person want you to do? Just ask them that. I mean, you're trying to get a job probably, and they're telling you what you can do about the race problem and then walk off? Or they are asking you what to do about it? Well, if they ask you, you just tell them what I'm telling you. Go and talk to the people you just left, sir, ma'am. The people you just left that cocktail party with. Go and talk to them. Go right back and talk to them. You just left the cocktail party and came over here to talk to me about ending racism. Go back to the cocktail party that I couldn't get in. I couldn't get in the cocktail party. Go back to them and tell them what you're telling me. And then when you make another trip down here, you'll be telling me of the success that I'm now going to enjoy, because you took care of business going to that cocktail party and taking over the discussion. Instead of talking about how they're going to enjoy more of persecuting black people, which is what they were talking about at that cocktail party, and you went and turned it around and got them to talk about how they're going to help your black friend down there on the other side of town, it's a done deal.
Okay, caller?
Yes.
Did that answer it?
I hope so.
Caller?
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
appreciate you. All right, Mr. Fuller, we've just about run up against the clock. And, in fact, we have run up against the clock. Oh, goodness. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Look forward. I'll talk to you on Saturday. And
thank you.
We'll look forward to seeing you, also talking with you next week on the compensatory concept. And thank you for listening to the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller. Thanks, Mr. Fuller.
Thank you.